When I met Claire, she didn't seem fragile. She was vibrant, clever, almost magnetic, the kind of woman who could fill a room just by walking into it. Her laughter had weight to it, like she was daring the world to quiet her. And yet, from the first night we spoke, there was a sadness behind her eyes that didn't quite fit with her smile. She told me she'd been through a lot. She said she was learning to take care of herself again. I believed her. I thought I was helping her heal. I didn't realize I was walking into a trap built out of sympathy. At first, it was subtle. She'd mention feeling dizzy after long days or say her chest hurt when she was stressed. I'd offer to take her to a doctor, and she'd shake her head. "It's fine," she'd say. "I've had this for years. I just pushed through it." It made her sound brave, independent, almost heroic. I admired that about her. She made suffering look graceful, and I wanted to protect her from it. That was my first mistake. A few months into the relationship, the stories about her health became more dramatic. She'd text me in the middle of the night, "I can't breathe," or "My heart's racing again." I dropped everything and rushed to her apartment, only to find her sitting on the couch, calm, quiet, wrapped in a blanket. She'd look up with a weak smile and whisper, "I'm okay now. You being here helped." And somehow, even though I knew something didn't add up, I stayed. Because how do you question someone who's supposedly sick? She learned that quickly. She learned that sickness gave her immunity. If she didn't want to talk about something, she'd suddenly clutch her stomach or say her vision was blurring. If I ever got upset, she'd breathe fast, close her eyes, and whisper, "Please, don't yell. It makes my condition worse." I never yelled at her. Not once. But she made me feel like I did. Like I was dangerous to her health. That's how she built her control. Not through aggression, but through fragility. The more delicate she acted, the more guilty I felt for wanting normal boundaries. Soon, everything revolved around her illness. Where we went, what we ate, who we saw. Her sickness wasn't just a condition anymore. It was the center of our lives. She had good days and bad days. On the good ones, she'd laugh, flirt, and talk about our future, about moving in together, about getting a dog, about all the things she wanted to do when she got better. On the bad ones, she'd stay in bed all day, texting me constantly, saying she didn't know if she'd make it through the night. And every time I tried to step away, she'd get worse. Once, I told her I couldn't come over because I had a meeting early the next morning. She went silent for an hour. Then she texted, "Never mind. It doesn't matter. I think I'm going to the ER." I called immediately. She didn't pick up. 30 minutes later, she answered in a trembling voice, saying she didn't want to bother me, that she'd just go alone. I grabbed my keys, ran to my car, and sped across the city like a fool. When I got there, she wasn't at the hospital. She was in her bed, crying softly. "I just needed you," she said. That night, she told me she didn't want to live if I wasn't in her life. I held her while she cried, my heart pounding with fear, guilt, and confusion. And just like that, the balance shifted forever. She didn't need to threaten me directly. The implication was enough. Her life depended on me. Over time, her episodes started happening right after arguments. Not before, not randomly. Always after I tried to set a limit, after I mentioned needing space or time for myself. I began to see the pattern, but by then it didn't matter. Every time I tried to leave, she'd collapse. Once, when I said I couldn't handle the pressure anymore, she fainted in front of me. I caught her before she hit the floor, panicking, begging her to wake up. She opened her eyes seconds later and whispered, "See what you do to me?" That sentence still haunts me. My life turned into a constant state of crisis management. I wasn't her boyfriend anymore. I was her caretaker, her therapist, her paramedic. She isolated me from everyone, saying they didn't understand what she was going through. And I believed it. I stopped seeing my friends. My parents thought I'd moved away for work. I barely recognized myself in the mirror, pale, tired, quiet. I'd wake up at night to the sound of my phone vibrating, her name flashing again and again, each message a mix of panic and guilt. "Where are you? I don't feel well. Don't ignore me, please. You're all I have." And I answered every single one. Because what kind of person ignores someone who says they might die without you? I told myself she just needed help, that I couldn't abandon her, that maybe love really meant staying, no matter what. But the truth was simpler. She had built her illness into a weapon, and I was a target. She made my compassion her control. And even though a part of me knew she was manipulating me, another part couldn't stop caring. That's the most twisted thing about it. She made me feel responsible for her pain, and I mistook that responsibility for love. I didn't realize how deep it had gone until night. She called saying she'd taken something. Just to sleep, she said. Her voice was slurred, distant. I froze, called an ambulance. When I arrived, she was sitting on the floor, her head tilted, eyes half open. The paramedics checked her vitals and whispered to each other. One of them pulled me aside and said, "She's fine. There's nothing in her system." I looked at her, and she looked back at me with something cold, something victorious. "You came," she whispered, smiling faintly. "I knew you would." That's when I realized she didn't want love. She wanted control. And her sickness wasn't the disease. It was the excuse. After that night with the ambulance, something inside me broke. I should have left. Anyone sane would have. But guilt is a powerful leash, and she had wrapped it tight around my throat. She didn't need to beg anymore. I stayed out of fear, not of her, but of what might happen to her if I wasn't there. That's how she wanted it. Every time I looked at her, I didn't see the woman who lied. I saw the woman who might die if I walked away. She learned to use that fear like a weapon. Every conversation, every decision, every hour of my day revolved around her health. If I was 5 minutes late to her place, she'd text, "My heart hurts again." If I didn't answer her calls at work, she'd message, "I think I'm going to faint." And if I dared to sound frustrated, she'd whisper, "You're making me worse." At first, I thought I could fix it, that if I just stayed calm, if I just showed her enough love, she'd get better. But her illness grew stronger the more I gave. It evolved with precision, always shifting into something that would keep me close. She started sending photos from hospital waiting rooms, hooked up to machines, saying, "They still don't know what's wrong with me." When I asked to come, she'd say, "No, I don't want to stress you. You've done enough." But hours later, she'd message again, "It would have meant a lot if you were here." No matter what I did, it was wrong. If I came, I was smothering her. If I didn't, I was abandoning her. She created a world where I was always the problem, and she was always the one suffering because of me. Then she started targeting the people around me. It began with small things. My best friend, Daniel, called one night, saying Claire had texted him. I froze. "Why?" I asked. He hesitated. "She said she was worried about you. Said you'd been acting distant. She wanted to make sure you were okay." It didn't make sense. But that's what she did. She built small bridges to the people in my life. Not to connect, but to control the narrative. Slowly, she turned everyone into her audience. She told my friends I was stressed, overworked, emotionally unstable. "He's such a good guy," she'd tell them, "but sometimes he shuts down. I think it's trauma." They believed her. Who wouldn't believe the fragile, sick girlfriend trying to help the man she loved? Soon, my friends stopped inviting me out. When I asked why, Daniel said, "We just thought you needed space." Claire said you've been anxious lately. Anxious. That word followed me everywhere. It became her favorite way to discredit me, to make me look like the unstable one. I started hearing it in her tone, her pauses. When we argued, she'd whisper, "You're getting anxious again, aren't you?" If I disagreed, she'd smile faintly and say, "See? That's what I mean." She even reached out to my mother, telling her she was worried about me. She said I'd been different, that I'd been shutting people out, that she thought I might need help. When my mother called, her voice was shaking. "Honey," she said, "Claire loves you. Maybe listen to her. You don't sound well." That's when I realized she wasn't just lying. She was rewriting reality. She wasn't trying to make me look bad. She was trying to make me look unwell. At work, things started to crumble. I get constant texts during meetings. "I can't breathe. Please call me. I'm scared. I'd excuse myself, run to the bathroom, call her, only to hear her voice calm and steady. It's better now that you answered. After a while, my manager started noticing. You okay? He'd ask. You've been distracted lately. I lied, said I was fine, but I wasn't. I was split in half. Part of me still wanted to believe she needed me, and the other part was screaming that I was being played. One evening, after missing a deadline because of one of her emergencies, I got called into a meeting. They told me to take some time off for my health. The irony made me sick. When I told her, she cried, real tears this time. Or maybe practice ones. Oh, no, baby, this is all my fault, she said, pulling me close. You've been carrying so much for me. And then, as I started to calm down, she whispered, but maybe this is a sign. Maybe you should move in with me so we can take care of each other. That's how manipulation works. It doesn't always feel like pressure. Sometimes it sounds like love. So I moved in, and that's when the walls really closed in. Her apartment was small, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, always too warm, always filled with a faint smell of medication and lavender. There were pill bottles on every surface, medical papers on the counter, doctor names written in neat, looping handwriting. But the more I looked, the more inconsistencies I found. The same date printed twice on 2 different prescriptions. 2 different doctors with identical notes. A hospital form that was clearly photocopied. I confronted her gently. Claire, these don't make sense. Her face changed instantly. You're accusing me of lying? I'm just saying maybe someone made a mistake. No, she snapped, voice sharp. You think I made a mistake. You think I'm faking this. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She threw the papers off the table, burst into tears, and ran to the bathroom, slamming the door. I could hear her sobbing, gasping, saying she couldn't breathe. I begged her to open the door. No response. When she finally did, 20 minutes later, she was pale, shaking. I thought you'd left me, she whispered. And that's when the guilt came rushing back. The same sick, heavy feeling that always drowned out logic. That night, I sat beside her bed while she slept, my mind racing. I knew something was wrong. I knew I was being controlled. But I also knew she'd made it impossible for me to leave. Because if I did, and something actually did happen to her, I'd never forgive myself. She'd turned compassion into a cage, and I was the one holding the lock. The day Claire collapsed in front of my mother was the day everything changed. It was the first time she brought her performance outside the walls of her apartment. The first time her sickness became theater. My mother had come to visit, worried after all the concerning things Claire had told her about my mental state. I tried to act calm, polite, normal. I wanted to prove to my mother that I was fine. But that day, Claire decided to take the story further. It started small. She said she wasn't feeling well, that her head was spinning again. My mom immediately got anxious, asking if she needed to sit down. Claire smiled weakly and said, "No, I'm okay. I just didn't sleep well." Then, as my mother was reaching for her coat to leave, Claire suddenly went pale and whispered, "I can't see anything." And then she dropped, just like that, limp, silent, motionless. I panicked. I knelt beside her, trying to wake her, calling her name. My mother screamed for help. We called an ambulance. Within minutes, paramedics were in the living room, shining lights into her eyes, checking her pulse, lifting her onto a stretcher. One of them asked if she had a known condition. Heart, I said automatically. Something with her heart. But when they looked at her monitor, they exchanged a quick glance, one that said more than words. One of them muttered, "Vitals are normal." I asked what that meant. He said nothing. At the hospital, they ran every test. Everything came back clear. Again, Claire sat on the bed, tears in her eyes, clutching my hand. "They never find anything," she whispered. "Maybe I'm going crazy." And right there, in front of my mother, in front of the nurses, she made herself smaller, fragile, broken, the perfect picture of a woman haunted by invisible pain. My mother held her, comforting her, and shot me a look filled with quiet disapproval. I didn't realize it then, But in her eyes, Claire was no longer my manipulator. She was my victim. From that day forward, my mother treated me differently. Her calls became soft but careful. "Don't be too hard on her," she'd say. "She's sick, honey. You can't understand what that's like." That's when I understood how far Claire's manipulation had spread. She had infected everyone's perception of me. The woman who faked sickness now had witnesses. After that, the collapses became more frequent, always timed perfectly. If I said I needed space, she'd fall. If I said I couldn't take it anymore, she'd cry until she couldn't breathe. Once, when I tried to leave the apartment for a walk, she locked herself in the bathroom and shouted, "If you walk out that door, I'll make sure you never see me again." I froze. I could hear the sound of pills rattling behind the door. I begged her to open it, terrified of what she might do. When she finally came out, she looked weak, trembling, but her eyes were calm. Too calm. "You see," she whispered, "you can't leave me. You're all I have." After that, I stopped trying to argue. I stopped trying to reason. My whole life became about preventing her next episode. I quit my job after missing too many days. My friends were gone. My mother only spoke to me through Claire. She called to ask how our girl was feeling, if she was resting enough, if I was being patient. And Claire would always answer the phone before me, always with that soft, sweet voice. "He's doing his best," she'd say. "He's just tired." At night, she'd curl up next to me, whispering, "I don't know why everyone leaves when you get sick, but you won't leave, right? You're not like them." And every time I said the same thing, "I'm not leaving." But inside, I was already gone. I started losing track of days. The blinds in the apartment were always closed. She said light gave her headaches. She barely ate, but insisted I cook for her. She'd say she was too weak to shower unless I helped her. Every part of her illness demanded my presence. And the few times I tried to step outside that role, she'd find new ways to punish me. Once, when I didn't pick up her call because I was in the bathroom, she texted my mother, "He's ignoring me. I think he's angry again." My phone rang seconds later. My mother's voice was sharp. "What's going on with you two? She's terrified of you." I just stood there, holding the phone, realizing that I'd lost control of the narrative completely. Claire had built an entire world where I was the abuser, and she was a brave, sick woman who loved me despite it. Then came the accident. It was late one night, after another argument about me wanting to go back to work. She said it would stress her out, that she couldn't be alone for 8 hours a day. I told her I needed to do something, that I was suffocating. She started crying, saying I didn't care if she lived or died. I tried to comfort her, but she pushed me away, shouting that I didn't love her anymore. Then she ran into the kitchen. I followed, terrified. She was holding a glass bottle, shaking, her eyes wild. "Maybe you'll care if something happens to me," she said. Before I could stop her, she slammed it against the counter. It shattered. She screamed, clutching her hand, blood dripping down her wrist. I froze. For a second, I didn't know if it was real or staged, if she'd actually hurt herself or if this was just another performance. But the blood was real. I grabbed a towel, pressed it to her hand, called for help. She cried into my chest, whispering, "Don't ever leave me again." Later at the hospital, the nurse said the cut wasn't deep, just enough to bleed. I asked Claire why she did it. She looked up at me with glassy eyes and said, "Because you scare me when you stop loving me." And with that, she turned the knife of guilt even deeper. After that night, I stopped sleeping. I started checking on her every hour, terrified she'd do something worse. I couldn't tell where her sickness ended and my fear began. I didn't trust my own mind anymore. She didn't have to threaten me. She'd already won. By then, I wasn't her boyfriend. I wasn't even her caretaker. I was her prisoner, emotionally, mentally, completely. And she knew it. One night, when I thought she was asleep, I heard her whisper in the dark, almost to herself, "As long as he's scared to lose me, he'll never leave." And that's when I realized I wasn't living with a sick woman. I was living with someone who'd made sickness her power. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of gray, airless day when time feels thick and heavy. I had gone to the pharmacy to refill one of Claire's prescriptions. The pharmacist, an older man with tired eyes, scanned the label, then frowned. "This was filled 2 days ago," he said. I froze. "That's impossible." She said she ran out. He looked at me for a long moment, then quietly said, "Sir, she's been filling the same prescription at 3 different pharmacies around town. Same dosage, same name." I thought maybe it was a mistake in the system. I left the pharmacy with my hands trembling. I didn't go straight home. I sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at the paper bag in my lap, feeling my entire world tilt. For months, I had built my life around her sickness. Every meal, every breath, every anxious heartbeat devoted to keeping her alive. And now, a stranger behind the counter had just told me that her illness might be nothing more than a script. When I finally walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch, a blanket draped over her legs, the TV muted, her face lit only by the blue glow of the screen. "You're late," she said softly. Were there lines again? I didn't answer. I placed the bag on the table. "The pharmacist said you filled this already." Her eyes flickered, just a small, almost invisible twitch. But I saw it. "That's impossible," she said, her voice trembling. "He must have mixed up my records." "He said you've done it 3 times, Claire." Silence, then a slow exhale. "Are you accusing me of lying?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe her, but the words wouldn't come. I had seen too much. She stood up, wrapping the blanket tighter around herself, suddenly looking frail again. "You think I want to live like this?" she whispered. "You think I enjoy being sick?" I didn't answer. She walked closer, her eyes glassy. "You think I like being the reason you lost your job? You think this is easy for me?" And just like that, she flipped it. Guilt, shame, pity, all tangled together until I didn't know which emotion belonged to who. I could feel myself breaking again, the same way I always did when she cried. But this time, something inside me resisted, something colder. That night, when she finally fell asleep, I opened her bedside drawer. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe proof that I was wrong, that she really was sick, that I was just paranoid. But instead, I found an entire collection of her performances neatly organized in folders. Hospital papers, duplicates, doctor notes, identical handwriting, same date, different names. And then, at the bottom of the drawer, a list. Names, dates, phone numbers. My friends, my mother, my former coworkers. Beside each name, short notes. Call to check on him. Sound worried. Say he's been distant lately. Mention his anger issues. I sat there staring at it, my hands shaking, realizing that for over a year, she hadn't just controlled my reality, she'd rewritten it. I heard her stir in bed behind me. I closed the drawer quietly and sat still until her breathing deepened again. My mind was a storm. Every memory, every conversation, every tear suddenly felt staged. I remember the first time she collapsed in front of my mother, the night she cut her hand, the time she cried when I tried to leave. They weren't cries for help, they were tactics. The next morning, I woke up before her. For the first time in months, I felt something other than fear. I felt rage. But it wasn't a loud, violent kind. It was the kind that moves silently, that builds like pressure under ice. I decided to test her. I made coffee, sat across from her, and said casually, "I called your doctor yesterday. He said you haven't been in for a few weeks." Her spoon froze in her cereal. For half a second, her mask slipped, just a flicker of panic, before she smiled again. "He must have checked the wrong file. I saw him last Tuesday." I didn't respond. I just nodded, and I knew then she'd never admit it. Not now. Not ever. Over the next few days, I started watching her more closely. How she'd check her reflection before crying. How she'd glance at her phone after every episode, like she was waiting for a reaction. I even noticed that her symptoms always aligned with moments when I was trying to regain some independence. When I applied for a remote job, she had a panic attack. When I tried meeting an old friend for lunch, she fainted. When I mentioned therapy for myself, she stayed up all night crying about how I didn't care about her pain anymore. It was all perfectly timed. And then came the moment that shattered everything. One night, I came home earlier than usual. She didn't hear me at first. She was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand, talking to someone on speaker. Her voice was calm, steady, even playful. "Yeah, he's still here," she said. "Of course he believes me. He always believes me." A pause. Then laughter, soft, cruel. "No, I don't feel bad. He deserves it for trying to leave." My stomach dropped. My vision blurred. I wanted to burst into the room, to scream, to demand answers. But I didn't. I just stood there, hidden behind the wall, listening as she continued. "Once he's broke enough, I'll leave first. That'll hurt more. He'll never see it coming." That was the night the illusion died. I left the apartment before she noticed me. I didn't even take my keys. I just walked into the cold, empty street, breathing for what felt like the first time in months. For the first time, I wasn't scared of her sickness. I was scared of her sanity. I didn't sleep that night. I walked aimlessly until sunrise, circling empty streets, feeling the air sting my skin. I thought I was free, that leaving her apartment meant leaving the nightmare behind. But that's the thing about people like Claire. They don't let you go. They find ways to pull you back, not because they love you, but because control is their oxygen, and I had been her air for too long. When I finally returned home, to my own apartment, the one I hadn't stepped into for months, it didn't feel like mine anymore. The air was stale. Dust coated the furniture. My reflection in the mirror looked like someone else. Hollow eyes, thin frame, a man half vanished. I sat on the floor, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and realized how empty silence could feel after so much chaos. But it was a good kind of emptiness. A clean wound. I decided then I was done. No more phone calls. No more messages. No more saving someone who never wanted to be saved. The next morning, I changed my number. I blocked her on every platform. I even told my mother to ignore her if she called. She didn't like that. She said Claire was worried sick about me. But I didn't care anymore. For the first time in a year, I felt like I could breathe. That peace lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, my manager called. "Hey, we need to talk," he said, his tone tight. Claire reached out. My stomach twisted. She said you've been harassing her, showing up at her place, threatening her. I couldn't even speak. "I know it's personal," he continued, "but this kind of thing can reflect badly on the company. You understand, right?" I tried to explain, to tell him it wasn't true, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice, that careful politeness people use when they don't believe you. Claire had gotten to him first. She always did. That night, I opened a new email account, one she didn't know about, and checked my old inbox out of habit. It was flooded, dozens of messages, some from unknown senders, some from friends who hadn't spoken to me in months. "You need help, man. I can't believe you did that to her. She showed us the messages. What the hell is wrong with you?" But the worst was one from Claire. The subject line read, "I told you I'd make you sorry for leaving." The body was just one line. "You can't hide from what you've done." And then attached screenshots, fake text messages, conversations that never happened. My words twisted, edited, pasted together to make me look like a monster. In one, it looked like I had written, "If you don't answer, I'll come over and make you regret it." In another, "You deserve everything that's coming to you." They looked real, too real. I knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just taking my freedom. She was stealing my name. For days, I couldn't go outside. My phone kept lighting up with unknown numbers, messages I didn't dare open. Then my mother called. Her voice was cold, distant. "Claire told me what happened," she said. She showed me the messages. "I don't even know who you are anymore." I tried to explain, to beg her to listen, but she hung up. That was the moment I realized I wasn't fighting a person anymore. I was fighting a story she'd written, cast, and directed perfectly. Every lie, every tear, every performance. It all led to this. She had prepared for my escape before I even thought about leaving. She built a narrative months ago, brick by brick, while I was too blinded by guilt to notice. The following week, I started seeing her shadow everywhere. A black car parked outside my building. A knock at the door that vanished when I opened it. A message from an unknown number that said, "You think this is over?" I didn't know if it was her or my own paranoia. She'd blurred the line so completely I couldn't tell anymore. One evening, I heard a soft knock. 3 slow taps. I froze. My first thought was that it was her. She'd found me, but when I looked through the peephole, it wasn't Claire. It was a police officer. He asked my name. Then he handed me a restraining order. "She says you've been stalking her," he said, reading from the document. "There's been a report of repeated harassment and emotional threats." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "She's lying," I said, voice cracking. "She's been lying for over a year." He looked at me, almost pitying. "That's for the court to decide." And just like that, everything she built, every manipulation, every performance, became my reality. The law didn't care about who was actually sick or who was actually suffering. On paper, I was the abuser. She was the victim. That night, I sat in my dark apartment, staring at the order, realizing that she had found the perfect way to trap me without touching me. She didn't need to hurt me physically. She'd built a world where I could scream the truth, but no one would ever hear it. Then came her final move. A few days later, I got an email from a new account. No name, no subject line. Just one sentence inside. "You shouldn't have looked in that drawer." My blood ran cold. That meant she knew. She knew I'd seen her notes, her lies, her entire web. And now she was warning me, or maybe just playing with me. That's when I realized she didn't want me back. She didn't even want me punished. She wanted me haunted. And it was working. Because every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear her voice. The softness, the tremble, the quiet, deadly calm when she'd whisper, "You'll never leave me, even if you do." I believed her. I couldn't breathe in that apartment anymore. The restraining order sat on the counter like a loaded gun, a silent reminder that she had won. But even while she painted me as a monster, something inside me refused to die. There was a sliver of clarity now, the kind that comes when you've lost everything. And in that clarity, I decided, if she could rewrite my life, I would rewrite my own truth. I started tracing her steps. Not literally. I couldn't go near her without risking arrest. But digitally. Old emails, phone records, hospital bills, anything I could find. At first, it was like picking through ashes. She had wiped most of her tracks clean. But then, slowly, a pattern emerged. A familiar name on one of the fake prescriptions. A doctor who no longer practiced. A support group she had attended that didn't exist. And then I found something that made my stomach turn. An old forum post under a different name. Same writing style. Same phrases she used with me. "I'm so tired. He scares me when he shuts down. I just need someone to believe me." In the replies, people offered sympathy. In one of them, a man commented, "She did the same to me." His username was hidden, but his story was my story. I created a burner account and reached out. "Did she tell you she was sick?" I wrote, "Did she make you think you had a problem?" Hours later, a message popped up. "You have no idea how far she'll go." We talked for days, cautiously, like two people comparing the same nightmare. He said her name wasn't even Claire when they were together. She called herself Olivia then. She'd faked a heart condition, fainted in public, isolated him from his friends, framed him as unstable when he tried to leave. She'd even filed a restraining order against him. My hand shook as I read. I wasn't alone. She'd done this before. I started digging deeper, reaching out to others. It was like lifting stones in a field and watching snakes scatter. Stories of different names, different towns, the same methods. Men who'd lost jobs, families, reputations. Men who still flinched at the sound of their phones. She left a trail of broken lives across 3 cities, always moving just before someone could piece it all together. I began documenting everything. Screenshots, emails, witness statements from the men she destroyed. I built a file, thick as a book, Each page a piece of the mask she'd worn. For weeks, I lived in that file, breathing only when I found another shred of proof. But obsession is its own kind of cage. The deeper I went, the more I felt her shadow pressing against me. Even though I hadn't seen her in months, I'd wake up at night convinced she was in the apartment. I'd hear her voice in the hallway. Sometimes I'd find little things moved on my counter, like someone had been inside. A picture frame turned slightly. A drawer open. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it wasn't. Then one evening, as I was compiling the last part of my file, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe. A woman's voice, quiet and shaking. Is this about Claire? I froze. Who is this? She's with my brother now. The voice said, he thinks she's sick. He won't listen to me. Please, tell me what to do. My heart stopped. She had already moved on to her next story, her next target. Another man who thought he was saving her. Another man who would lose himself in her sickness. I told the woman everything. I sent her my file. I warned her brother. But even as I hit send, I knew the truth. It wouldn't matter. Not right away. Because that's how Claire worked. She didn't just manipulate. She built a reality so convincing that even evidence felt like a lie. That night, I sat in the dark with the file open on my laptop, my hands trembling. I had enough proof to destroy her reputation. Enough to warn the next man. Maybe even enough for the police to listen. But I also knew what she was capable of. How she'd twist it. How she'd turn every word against me. How she'd make herself the victim again. I didn't know if I had the strength to go to war with her. And yet, as I stared at the file, one thought cut through the fear like a blade. She wasn't just a sickness I'd survived. She was a sickness that was still spreading. If I did nothing, someone else would become me. I didn't plan on seeing her again. Every piece of me that still had sense screamed not to. But after that call, after hearing that she'd already found another man to destroy, something inside me snapped. Fear turned to fury. I wasn't going to be another quiet victim buried under her stories. I wasn't going to let her rewrite another life. It took 2 weeks to track her down. She had moved to a new city under a new name, Clara Evans this time. The pattern was flawless, the same polished mask she always wore. She joined a small community group for women with chronic heart conditions. Her social media was full of photos of her in hospital gowns, all with captions like, "Staying strong, broken heart," and "Healing isn't linear." And there, in one of those pictures, was the new guy, smiling, arm around her. The same look I used to wear, that hollow mix of worry and devotion. His name was Marcus. I knew because she'd tag him. I spent 3 days watching their perfect little illusion online. Dinners, walks, her holding his hand in every photo like a trophy. It made me sick, not because I was jealous, because I could see my own ghost in him. I decided I'd go to her, not to beg, not to fight, just to look her in the eye one last time. To remind myself she was real, flesh and blood, not some phantom that lived inside my head. When I found her, she was at a cafe. Same routine as always. Fragile smile, hair pinned neatly, a soft scarf around her neck that screamed delicate. Marcus was with her, laughing at something she'd said. She looked happy, healthy, alive. Too alive for someone supposedly dying of invisible illnesses. I waited until Marcus went to counter. Then I walked up to her table. For a second, she didn't look up. And when she did, that smile froze. "Oh," she said softly, voice sweet as venom. "It's you. You've moved on fast," I said. My voice didn't shake this time. Her eyes flicked toward Marcus, then back to me, calm, calculating. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You're not supposed to come near me. Restraining order, remember? I'm not here to fight." I leaned in closer. "I just want you to stop. Leave him alone." She tilted her head, that same mock sympathy she used to use on me. "Stop what? Being sick? Loving people too deeply? Lying," I said quietly. "Breaking people until they don't know what's real anymore." Her smile didn't fade. It deepened. "You still think I'm the villain, don't you? That poor, little you is just my victim. She sipped her coffee, eyes locked on mine. You still don't understand. I don't make men weak. I just show them what they already are. Marcus came back, 2 cups in hand. Everything okay here? Clara now, reached out and took his hand gently. Yes, sweetheart, she said. I's never leaving mine. He was just leaving. I stared at her, at the perfect picture she'd painted again. The soft-spoken woman. The protective boyfriend. The story ready to twist itself into another tragedy. I wanted to scream the truth, to tell Marcus who she really was. But I knew it wouldn't matter. If I said one word, she'd cry, maybe faint, and he'd become her next night. I'd become the crazy ex who couldn't let go. So I left, but not before saying one last thing. It's all but catch up to you. People like you can only hide for so long. She smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. I don't hide, she whispered. People stopped looking. That night, I went home and opened the file I'd built. All the screenshots, testimonies, everything. I uploaded it online. Anonymously. No names, no locations. Just her methods. I called it the patient game. Within weeks, it spread. People started sharing their own stories. Dozens of them. Some too similar to ignore. Some almost identical. And though I didn't name her, I knew she'd see it. I wanted her to know that her shadow wasn't invisible anymore. That every time she built a new lie, someone out there would recognize it. Months passed. The world didn't fix itself. She didn't go to jail. But sometimes that's not how monsters die. Sometimes they fade quietly when you take away their audience. Then one morning I got an email. No sender, no subject. Just one sentence. You think you won, but I'm still the one they believe. No signature. But I didn't need one. I smiled for the first time in a long time, because that line told me everything. She wasn't untouchable anymore. She was scared. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and stepped outside into the cold morning air. For the first time in over 2 years. I didn't feel like her story anymore. I felt like my own. And maybe that's what survival really is, not proving they lied, but refusing to live inside their version of you. But sometimes late at night, when my phone buzzes, I still hesitate before checking. Because part of me knows people like her never stop playing the game. They just change the name.